listening to this right now, something in you is tired. Not necessarily your body, maybe your mind, maybe the part of you that keeps track of things. That part can get tired too. That is fine. It doesn't need to be different right now. You don't have to be doing anything with this moment. You can just be in it. The moment doesn't need a purpose. It can just pass, the way moments do. If your thoughts are loud right now, that's fine. If they're quiet, that's fine too. Neither one is more correct. A mind is allowed to be however it is. There is no version of this moment where you are supposed to feel a certain way. There is no test happening. There is no score being kept. Somewhere, right now, someone else is tired too. Somewhere, someone else is lying still, not sleeping yet. Thoughts moving slowly through their head, like slow weather. That is not unusual. That is just what minds do sometimes. You don't have to organize your thoughts right now. They can stay disorganized. They can drift. A thought doesn't need to be finished. It can just be there, then not be there. Then another one can arrive. Nothing about this moment needs solving. If there's a heaviness somewhere in your chest, or your shoulders, or behind your eyes, that heaviness is allowed to be there. It doesn't need an explanation right now. It doesn't need to be fixed before you're allowed to rest. Rest doesn't have to be earned. That's worth repeating, quietly, without emphasis. Rest doesn't have to be earned. A lot of tiredness comes from believing something needs to happen first, that the day needs to be finished properly, that the list needs to be shorter, that the mind needs to be calmer before it's allowed to slow down. None of that has to be true right now. It can just be untrue for this small stretch of time. You are allowed to not have anything resolved. You are allowed to still be in the middle of things. Being in the middle of things is not a failure. Almost everything is in the middle of something. A day is in the middle of a week. A season is in the middle of a year. A thought is in the middle of a longer, slower thought that hasn't finished forming yet. You don't need to finish anything right now. If it helps, you can imagine your thoughts as something outside of you, passing by, not needing your attention, not needing you to do anything about them. Or you don't have to imagine anything at all. Either way is fine. There is no correct way to listen to this. If your attention drifts away and comes back, that's normal. If it drifts and doesn't come back for a while, that's normal too. Attention isn't supposed to stay fixed on one thing for very long. It moves. That's what it does. You don't have to hold on to anything. Sometimes tiredness isn't really about needing sleep. Sometimes it's about carrying something for a long time without putting it down. You don't have to put it down right now either, if that feels like too much. You can just notice that you're carrying it. That's enough for now. Noticing is enough. It doesn't have to lead anywhere. If you were hoping this would tell you what to do next, it won't. There isn't a next step here. There isn't a plan. This is just a quiet space, without direction, without a destination. You can stay in it as long as you want, or not. Nothing is being asked of you. If a thought comes up about something unfinished, something waiting for you tomorrow or later tonight, you can let it sit there without responding to it. It doesn't need an answer right now. It's allowed to just exist, unanswered, for a while. Unanswered things are not the same as unsolved problems. Some things are just unanswered for now, and that's a normal state for things to be in. You don't have to reach a conclusion about your day, your week, or how you're feeling. Feelings don't need conclusions. They can just be present, shift slowly, and eventually change into something else, without you having to do anything to make that happen. This is not a moment for change. It's just a moment for being where you are. Being where you are is not a small thing, but it's also not something you need to try hard at. It's already happening. It's already true. You are already here, wherever here is. However tired, however unclear things feel, that's enough. If your mind has moved on to something else while listening to this, that's fine. It doesn't mean anything went wrong. Minds move. That's expected. There's no need to bring your attention back forcefully. It can come back on its own, slowly, or not come back at all for a while. Either way, nothing is lost. Some days feel like they don't add up to anything clear. That's common. Not every day needs to have a shape. Not every day needs to mean something by the end of it. A day can just happen and then be over, without needing to be understood. You don't have to understand today. You don't have to understand this week, or this month, or the general direction things are moving in. Understanding isn't required for you to be allowed to rest. If there's uncertainty sitting somewhere in you right now, that uncertainty doesn't need to be removed before you can be at ease. The two can exist at the same time. You can be uncertain and still be still. You can be unsure and still be quiet. Nothing about stillness requires certainty first. A lot of effort gets spent trying to feel settled before allowing rest. But settling isn't a requirement. It's not a locked door that needs a key. Rest is available even when things are unsettled. It's just less discussed that way. You don't need to feel okay to be allowed to slow down. If you're carrying a sense that you should be doing something else right now, that sense is common, and it isn't necessarily true. There will likely always be something else that could be done. That will probably still be the case tomorrow and the day after. It doesn't cancel out this moment. This moment can still exist, quietly, alongside everything else that could be done. You are not behind, or if you are behind, being behind is not an emergency. Most things marked behind are just things that haven't happened yet, in their own time. That's a different thing from failure. Time moves at its own pace, regardless of how anyone feels about it. It doesn't move faster because someone is anxious. It doesn't move slower because someone is calm. It just moves steadily, the same way for everyone. You don't have to keep pace with anything right now. If tiredness feels heavier at night, that's common too. Nights can make ordinary tiredness feel larger than it is during the day. That's not a special insight about your situation. It's just something nights tend to do. Things often look different and more manageable in daylight, without anything about the situation actually changing. You don't have to solve anything at night. Night is not for solving. It's mostly just for existing until it becomes day again. If you notice yourself thinking about tomorrow, you can let that thought stay distant, unformed, unplanned. Tomorrow doesn't need to be prepared for right now. It will arrive whether or not it's been thought through in advance. There's a kind of tiredness that comes from trying to hold too many things in mind at once. Tasks, conversations, small worries, unfinished thoughts. If that's present, you don't have to sort through all of it now. It can stay unsorted. Unsorted is a normal state for a mind to be in sometimes. You are not required to have a tidy mind. A mind doesn't need to be tidy to rest. Rooms get rested in, even when they aren't clean. Minds are similar. If there is sadness present, or something close to sadness, it doesn't need a reason attached to it right now. Some feelings show up without clear causes, or with causes too tangled to name quickly. That's allowed. A feeling doesn't have to explain itself before it's allowed to be there. You don't have to name what you're feeling. Naming is optional. Feeling without naming is also complete. If part of you is waiting for this to turn into advice, it won't. There isn't a version of this that tells you what to change. Nothing here is suggesting you should be different than you are right now. You can stay exactly as tired, exactly as unclear, exactly as quiet as you already are. That's not a problem being addressed. That's just a description of where you are. If it's been a while since it started, you might not remember everything that's been said. That's fine. None of it needs to be remembered. This isn't something to study or hold on to. It's something to let pass through, mostly unremembered, the way most background sound is. You don't have to retain anything from this. If your body feels heavy right now, that heaviness doesn't need to lift before anything else can happen. It can just stay for as long as it stays, without being treated like a problem needing a solution. Bodies get heavy sometimes. That's not unusual. It doesn't require explanation. If your breathing has slowed down at some point while listening, that's fine. If it hasn't, that's fine too. Breathing doesn't need to be adjusted on purpose right now. It can continue however it's already continuing. Nothing here requires effort. If you're near sleep, you can stay near sleep. If you're not near sleep, you can stay where you are, awake, quiet, unresolved. There isn't a place you're supposed to end up by the end of this. There is no end point being aimed for. This isn't building toward anything. It's not leading up to a message or a takeaway or a piece of advice saved for last. There isn't a moral here. There isn't a lesson waiting at the end. It's just been quiet, ordinary reflection, the kind that doesn't ask anything of you. If your mind is still busy, that's fine. Busy minds don't disqualify someone from rest. Rest and a busy mind can exist together. Uneasily maybe, but together. If your mind has gone quiet, that's fine too. Quiet doesn't mean something has been achieved. It's just another state a mind can be in, temporarily, like all the others. Nothing has to be different by the time this ends. You can be exactly as you were before this started. Nothing needed to change for this to have been fine to listen to. There was no requirement attached to it. If there's a small stillness somewhere in you right now, it doesn't need to be held on too tightly. It can be loose. It can slip away later, replaced by something else, and that will be fine too, because stillness was never meant to be permanent. Nothing is. Things pass. Tiredness passes. Heaviness passes. Quiet passes too, eventually, into something else, and that's not a loss. That's just what time does with feelings. It moves them along, without asking permission, without needing acknowledgement. You don't have to do anything with this moment before it changes into the next one. It's allowed to just end, the way moments end, without ceremony, without a clear line marking where it stopped and something else began. Wherever you are right now, that's where you are. Whatever state your mind is in, that's the state it's in. None of it needs adjusting before it's acceptable. It already is. There might be a quiet pull somewhere in the background toward checking on something, a message, a task, a small unfinished thing. That pull doesn't have to be followed right now. It can just be noticed, the way you'd notice a sound in another room, without getting up to investigate it. Not investigating something is not the same as ignoring it. It's just choosing, for this stretch of time, to let it stay where it is. If there's a habit of mentally rehearsing conversations or replaying something that already happened, that habit doesn't need to stop on command. It can keep happening quietly, in the background, without being the center of anything. You don't have to fight it. You also don't have to follow it all the way through. Thoughts don't need permission to arrive, and they don't need permission to leave either. If you notice a thought repeating itself, that's common. Some thoughts circle a few times before fading, the way a sound echoes and grows quieter before it stops. You don't have to interrupt the echo. It tends to quiet down on its own, eventually, without help. There is no urgency in any of this. Even the parts of you that feel urgent, a deadline, an obligation, a person waiting on something, can stay slightly further away right now than they usually do. Not gone, just further away. The way a light in another room is further away than the one you're sitting under. You don't have to bring anything closer than it already is. If your breathing has changed at some point without you trying to change it, that's fine. If it hasn't changed at all, that's fine too. Breath moves the way it moves. It doesn't need supervision. Sometimes the body settles before the mind does. Sometimes the mind settles first. There isn't a correct order. Whichever one is slower right now is allowed to take its time. Nothing about this requires matching pace with anything else. If it feels like nothing in particular is happening right now, that's accurate. Nothing in particular is happening. That's not a gap that needs filling. It's just a stretch of time without demands in it, which is rarer than it should be, and doesn't need to be treated as wasted. Unfilled time is not wasted time. It can just be time passing quietly, the way it's passing right now, without needing anything else added to it. If it's later now than when this started, that's just what happens with time. It moves forward whether or not anything has been settled. That's not a comment on you. That's just what time does, indifferently, for everyone. You don't have to have settled anything by now. Some people carry a quiet belief that rest has to be justified, that there has to be a reason good enough to allow it. That belief is common, but it isn't a rule anyone has to follow. Rest doesn't need justification. It doesn't need to be earned through tiredness being severe enough, or through enough having been done beforehand. You can simply be resting without a reason attached to it. If there's a sense of falling behind on things that matter to you, that sense can stay there without being addressed right now. It's allowed to be uncomfortable without requiring an immediate response. Discomfort doesn't always need to be resolved the moment it appears. Some discomfort just needs to be allowed to exist for a while. If you're waiting for a feeling of relief, that's understandable. But relief isn't something that has to arrive for this to be worthwhile. It might arrive. It might not. Either way, you're allowed to keep listening or not, without that outcome determining anything. Nothing here is dependent on how you feel by the end. If your thoughts have gone somewhere unrelated to any of this, that's fine. Minds wander toward whatever they wander toward. There isn't a wrong direction for a mind to drift in during a quiet moment like this. You don't have to redirect your thoughts back to anything in particular. If there's a low hum of something like loneliness present, it doesn't need addressing right now. It can just be there, quietly, in the background, the way most feelings are, most of the time, without needing to be solved on the spot. Feelings don't usually need to be solved. They mostly just need to be allowed to pass through, at their own pace, without being rushed or blocked. You're not blocking anything by staying still. Staying still is not avoidance. Sometimes stillness gets treated like it's a delay of something more important. But stillness is not always in the way of anything. Sometimes it's just what's happening on its own terms, without being a placeholder for something else. This moment doesn't have to be a placeholder. It can just be the moment it is. If there's a quiet impatience somewhere in you, waiting for something to shift, that impatience doesn't need to be resolved either. It can sit alongside everything else that's here right now. The tiredness, the stillness, the unresolved things, without needing to be first in line. Impatience is just another feeling passing through. It doesn't have priority over anything else. If a memory surfaces, unprompted, from somewhere further back than today, that's fine too. Memories do that sometimes, arriving without invitation, staying for a moment, then receding again. You don't have to do anything with the memory when it appears. It doesn't require a response. You can let it pass through, the same way a thought passes through. Noticed briefly, then gone. If there's tension anywhere in your body right now, your jaw, your hands, your shoulders, that tension doesn't need to be released on command. It can loosen on its own time, or stay as it is. Either way is fine. Bodies don't always respond immediately to being noticed, and that's not a failure of noticing. Noticing tension is not the same as needing to fix it right away. If your mind keeps returning to something specific, something that feels unfinished or unclear, you don't have to work through it right now. It can keep returning quietly as many times as it needs to, without you having to arrive at anything by the last time it comes back. Some things take longer to settle than a single sitting allows for. That's normal. There isn't a deadline for when a thought is supposed to stop circling. If it feels like this stretch of quiet has gone on for a while now, that's accurate. It has. That's not a problem. Quiet doesn't wear out the way some things do. It can continue for a long time without losing anything. You don't have to do anything differently the longer this continues. Whatever state you were in earlier is allowed to still be roughly the state you're in now, or it's allowed to have shifted slightly, or a lot. Neither direction is required. There's no correct amount of change expected from time passing quietly like this. It can just keep being quiet for as long as it's quiet, without anyone deciding what that's supposed to accomplish. If you've noticed the tone of this staying the same for a while now, that's intentional in a loose sense, not to convince you of anything, just to stay steady. The way something in the background stays steady, without asking to be noticed. You don't have to notice it either. If your mind has settled somewhat since it started, that settling doesn't need to be maintained on purpose. It can shift again later into something less settled, and that won't undo anything. Nothing here was meant to last permanently. It was only meant to be present for a while. If your mind hasn't settled at all, that's fine too. Unsettled minds are not behind schedule. There isn't a schedule. Whatever is unresolved right now, can likely stay unresolved a while longer without anything going wrong. Most things do. Most things stay unresolved for long stretches, quietly, without causing the disruption that might be feared. You don't have to resolve anything before allowing yourself to be still. If there's a part of you checking whether this has helped, that checking doesn't need an answer right now. Helpfulness isn't the measure being used here. There's no measure being used at all. This has just been quiet company for a while, without direction, without a request attached to it. If your body feels different now than it did earlier, all the same, either is fine. Bodies shift slowly, on their own timelines, without much say from anyone. You don't have to track the shift. You don't have to hold it in place. If your thoughts feel further away than they did earlier, that's fine. If they feel just as close, that's fine too. Closeness and distance aren't things you have to manage right now. Wherever you are right now, in this stretch of time, that's simply where you are. Nothing further is needed. Nothing further is being asked. You can stay here, in this, for as long as it stays quiet, or let it fade into whatever comes next, whenever that happens, without deciding anything about it in advance.